This module will cover modifying your enterprise. Once you have developed a baseline enterprise, it is best to save it and then work on a copy so that you can compare the impact of subsequent changes. Working on a copy, you can change relevant parameters such as pasture growth, calving time, and size of your herd in the scenario player, which allows you to see the results of these changes immediately displayed in the graph below. When using the scenario player, keep in mind that there are two basic ways to modify the enterprise: change feed supply or feed demand. For example, ways of increasing the feed supply include sowing areas of improved pasture, sowing fodder crops to fill feed gaps, applying quick response fertilizers, for example urea, to increase existing pasture at strategic times, or use of supplements. The scenario player allows you to scale your pasture growth figures up or down. Altering the pasture growth percentage upwards will increase the pasture in a uniform percentage over the year, and this might be an expected response to lime, superphosphate, or similar products. Conversely, you might like to alter the pasture growth percentage downwards, as this might reflect a reduction in pasture inputs or an overall reduction in predicted or recorded rainfall. As mentioned in the introduction, there is a direct link between having good quality pasture available for your animals and the amount of greenhouse gas emissions emitted from your business. This is because high quality pastures means higher quality feed with increased digestibility, which reduces the loss of energy in the form of methane. The scenario player allows you to plan ahead and to match your feed supply with your feed demand, thus keeping your production efficient, which will reduce your greenhouse gas emissions. For those pasture and cropping practices that target specific times of the year or specific pasture species, go to the Customize section to change feed supply for particular months. In some environments, climate change is forecast to change the distribution of rainfall during the year. For example, there may be an opportunity to use summer active pasture species if there is a forecast for increased summer rainfall. Summer active pasture species include lucerne and some of the tropical grasses, which are increasingly being sown in non-tropical environments. Using the tool, you can test how including a tropical grass on a proportion of your property will increase the amount of pasture produced over the warmer months and how this will impact on your overall feed supply. For example, this may reduce your need for supplementary feeding. Once pasture supply changes are made, you can then change your herd structure and consider changes to breeding and/or trading cattle while ensuring that the demand and the minimum feed available is roughly the same. By doing this, you can determine the impact of the changes on herd and flock numbers. The scenario player lets you scale up or down the size of your herd or flock across all stock classes. Alternatively, if you would like to have a look at the effects of changes to herd or flock structure and composition, you can go back to the demand page of the tool and change the number of animals per stock class. This is an important adaptation to increased climatic variability or long-term climate change for beef producers. The simplest way to do this is to operate a trading enterprise, whereby you purchase sheep or cattle to utilize feed during times of surplus and sell before demand exceeds supply. If you want to consider how you can keep your breeding herd or flock rather than adding in trading, you may wish to see what can happen if you alter the time of calving or lambing under different climate scenarios. For example, producers with a winter feed gap who currently calve mostly in July and August may be able to reduce their winter grazing pressure by delaying calving a month or two. While that would reduce subsequent weaning weights due to lower age at weaning, the increased feed availability means that additional feed is available to run stock during winter, which can then be sold, usually at a premium, the following spring or summer. To manage the risk of variable seasons as we head into a changed climate, increasing the proportion of weaners on hand may offer a risk mitigation strategy. For example, you can use the tool to consider weaner selling strategies. Keeping a higher proportion of your weaners to sell as yearlings provides you the flexibility to sell younger cattle if the season falls away. You can do this by going into the breeding herd section of the tool and reducing the number of breeders and increasing the number of yearling steers and heifers sold, and then check the impact of this change on feed demand and minimum available feed. For breeding herds, you may wish to consider keeping more heifers and joining these, culling those that are empty or early pregnant. This will assist you in selecting for a herd with higher fertility. This will ultimately give you a herd which has the capacity to reproduce earlier and in potentially tougher seasons. Once you have considered different scenarios for matching feed demand and feed supply, the farm gas calculator can be used to determine how these changes will impact on your greenhouse gas emissions. Once each management change is implemented as a new scenario, it is important to check the key details figures. This ensures that any changes are not increasing the overall pasture utilisation, because this simply increases exposure to risk in a variable climate. The feed demand calculator does not quantify the economic impact of either the original herd inputs or any modifications. So, for example, once you have worked through scenarios that compare the impact on feed demand of keeping weaners and instead selling yearling cattle but also running less cows, it is then important to attach dollar values to these changes. At the same time, while trading stock is an excellent way of potentially increasing pasture utilisation, obviously purchase price and sale price have a huge bearing on the profitability of such an activity, and sound estimates of them are required as part of their consideration. All producers should work through a budget to check the economic benefit of potential changes to their enterprise, seeking professional help to do this if necessary.